All right, so summer is almost around the corner, and at least here in Las Vegas, I would say summer weather has definitely been here for at least probably a month to a month and a half or so now. So I've been rocking a lot more of my sort of like fresher fragrances, and so what I have here today is going to be my top 10 summer inspiration list. All right. So all of these are inspired fragrances, none are originals, and let's go ahead and get into it. So first fragrance I'm going to start off with is, at least in my opinion, it's my favorite, sort of inspiration of Louis Vuitton's Pacific Chill, and this is Maison Alhambra's Jean Lowe Vibe. So John Lowe Vibe, at least for me anyway, was like out of all of the Pacific Chill inspired fragrances that I've smelled so far, this one has definitely been, my favorite one. Now, obviously, this does not, it doesn't have as much depth and complexity as what the original Pacific Chill has. And quality wise, it's not necessarily up there with the Louis Vuitton either. But I mean, compared to all the other sort of, Pacific Chill inspired fragrances that I've smelled, really, I would say the only one that kind of comes close to this is Alexandria's version, Pacific Coast. And I mean, I do like Pacific Coast opening for sure. But to me, as Pacific Coast starts to dry down and, side by side with John Lowe Vibe, to me, this smells better in the dry down than what the Alexandria version does, at least in my opinion. It smells better and a little bit closer to the original. But, again, I do think, if you want the exact same experience that you get with Pacific Chill, at least so far anyway, you kind of have to buy the original fragrance, because I haven't smelled anything that's come like 95% close or anything like that. But this, at least in my opinion, is at least, probably, 90% or, slightly better. So it is very, very good, man. So again, I would definitely recommend checking out Jean Lowe Vibe. At least on me, it gives me pretty decent, performance. So around like 7 hours or so of longevity. And, the projection is not as good as the Louis Vuitton, but it is definitely respectable for like a $30 fragrance. So again, man, if you're looking for a really solid interpretation of Pacific Chill, I absolutely would recommend Maison Alhambra's Jean Lowe Vibe. All right, so the next one on the list, this one has been, I would say, like hyped like crazy here lately. So much so that, I mean, you really can't hardly find this fragrance anywhere. I do know that FragranceBuy.ca just recently got it back in stock, but I don't know if they still have it in stock at, the time of recording this video. So if they do, I'll have a link in the description to where you can pick this up, as well as all of the other fragrances on the list. But this one is going to be from French Avenue, and it's Vulcan Feu, or Feu, however you say it. This is their take on Stefan Humbert Lucas's God of Fire. And, definitely the more that I wear this fragrance, the more I really, really do enjoy it. Now, it's not going to be like a one-to-one to God of Fire, but I do think that for the price that you pay for this fragrance, the quality that you do get, it is pretty good. And so far, this has been, one of the better, cheaper interpretations of God of Fire. Now, I do think that the closest one that I've smelled is Alexandria's Fire of God. But Alexandria's Fire of God, while it does smell more like a one-to-one to God of Fire, that fragrance is significantly more expensive than what Vulcan Feu is, or Feu, however you say it. So that fragrance for 100 ml, the Alexandria, is going to run, before taxes and discounts, shipping. It's going to run like around, I believe, $120 for 100 ml. Whereas with this fragrance, this is, I believe, anywhere from about $45 to $50 or so for 100 ml on most websites. So, I mean, that's a significant difference. And the Alexandria does not smell more than twice as better, you know, than what the French Avenue does. It does definitely have a little bit more smoothness to it, and like I said, it does, you know, smell slightly higher quality. But this, for like around that $50 range, is very good, and it performs really well, also. So, you know, if you're looking for like a very kind of tropical, fruity, you know, like mango, citrus type of fragrance, that, you know, it does start to kind of warm up and get slightly sort of ambery as it starts to dry down, then I definitely think that this would be, you know, right up your alley. It doesn't have much versatility. I feel like this fragrance is mainly just kind of like a summertime hot weather type of fragrance, but it is a very, very good fragrance nonetheless. And it does perform very well also. So I always, every time I wear this fragrance, I've always gotten over 10 hours with it in terms of longevity. And the projection on it is also very good as well, at least for about the first 2 hours. So again, man, check out Vulcan Feu from French Avenue. All right, the next one on the list, this one is a fragrance that I've had in my collection for a couple of years now. And I absolutely still enjoy this one. And this is another one from French Avenue, and this is French Avenue's Divin Asylum. So this is their take on Elysium Parfum Cologne. And this is another one of those fragrances where this is definitely the closest Elysium Parfum Cologne, you know, interpretation that I've smelled. Definitely wish that they would release like a parfum, you know, parfum pour homme version. I would definitely welcome that. But this nonetheless is, again, the closest that I've smelled to, you know, the Elysium Parfum Cologne. It's slightly less sparkly than what the original Elysium is. But I feel like for as close as what this comes to, you know, the original Elysium, this doesn't make me want to go out and buy another bottle of Elysium. Now, this also does perform, at least on me anyway, better than what the original Elysium does. I tend to be able to smell this on me for a lot longer than what I ever did with the original Elysium. I loved my bottle of Elysium, but the issue that I had with it was after probably 4.5 hours or so, it was very, very hard to smell on me. Whereas with this fragrance, I easily smell this fragrance like 7 and 8 hours later, easily each time. So that's the main reason why I really, really love this fragrance, and why I still have this fragrance, is because, at least for me, it gives me most of what you get with Elysium. Like I said, the opening is slightly less sparkly, but it still does the opening very well. And then, you know, it gives you that same sort of, you know, musky, slightly kind of spicy and floral, you know, really sort of fresh feel that you get from, you know, the original Elysium Parfum Cologne. I would say really in the dry down, it's very, very hard to tell any sort of difference between this and the original Elysium. Really, the main area where you'll be able to tell the difference is in the initial opening for like the first maybe 20 seconds or so. All right. So again, man, very, very good on Divin Asylum, man. Like I said, the performance on this is really good. It's very close to the original, and quality wise, I really do think that they did a great job with this one. So again, man, check out Divin Asylum from French Avenue. All right, next one on the list. This is another one from French Avenue, and in my opinion, this is one of the best interpretations of Afternoon Swim, and this is Pinnace Oryn from French Avenue. All right, so this fragrance, man, as soon as I smelled it, I was like, yeah, this smells almost exactly like Afternoon Swim. Now, at the time, I didn't have I no longer had like a sample of Afternoon Swim. So at some point in time, I'll get another Afternoon Swim sample. to really kind of, you know, compare side by side between it and this. But out of all of the other sort of afternoon swim interpretations that I've smelled, so, you know, the Luciano, I believe it's Sunset Swim is what that one was. You have the Grandeur Elite one. You have the Alexandria version. Out of all of those, this to me smelled like the best one. It reminds me exactly of Afternoon Swim. You know, it has that same sort of zesty, citrusy opening that you get with Afternoon Swim with the mandarin and the bergamot. Has that slightly kind of gingery feel to it. And it has that very sort of musky, sort of ambroxan feel to the fragrance as well. Like I said, it definitely reminds me of Afternoon Swim for sure. Again, I'll have to get a sample of the original and, you know, really kind of do like a exact side by side between the two. But this to me, like I said, is very, very close. Now, the Alexandria version is also very close as well. But the thing with the Alexandria version is their version is like amplified. So that fragrance can come off a slightly different way. It can come off a lot more sort of like heavier in some sorts, because it's just a much stronger scent than, you know, the original Afternoon Swim. And I would say really any of the other sort of interpretations of Afternoon Swim, you know, that I've smelled. But yeah, man, this is very good. Now the performance on it is not really that great. You know, you're only going to get like 4 to 5 hours or so of longevity. And the projection, I would say, is pretty decent for about the first hour and a half or so. And then it definitely starts to kind of, you know, dial back. But Afternoon Swim is really the exact same way. So this does kind of behave the same way that Afternoon Swim does. And that's one of the reasons why I do like this fragrance. So again, man, definitely check out Pinnace Oryn from French Avenue if you're looking for a solid Afternoon Swim interpretation. All right, next one on the list. This one is another one, again, from French Avenue. And this one is Arsh Extrait from French Avenue. So this is their take on Guerlain's L'Homme Idéal Platine Privé, that fragrance. It's not really the same as that fragrance at all. It's a lot sweeter, and has more of sort of like a denser type of feel to it. But this fragrance also, it is, at least on me anyway, it's a lot more longer lasting, and it definitely projects a lot better than what Platine Privé does. It's a very just kind of like, it's a fresh citrusy type of scent, kind of slightly floral as well, and has a slightly kind of creamy sort of feel to the fragrance. But this is definitely a little bit more on the denser side than what, you know, Platine Privé is. So this is definitely going to be a lot more noticeable for sure, especially in warmer weather. And I kind of feel like this fragrance, because it is a little bit more denser and a little bit more stronger, it makes it a little bit more, you know, appropriate for other seasons. So, you know, I would definitely say that this is going to be pretty much, I would say, spring through summer for the most part is, I would say, the best time to really wear this fragrance. Projection on it is very good, at least for about the first 2.5 hours or so. And then longevity wise, I easily get over 10 hours with this each time. So again, man, check out Arsh Extrait if you're looking for, again, like a very sort of fresh, citrusy, really easy to wear, you know, slightly floral, slightly creamy style fragrance. It kind of gets compared to the Chanel fragrance. What is it? It's the one that comes in like the bottle with like the white writing on it, I believe. Edition Blanche, I believe. Can't think of the full name of the fragrance, but I've seen other people kind of compare it to that as well. I guess you could say you kind of get some aspects of that fragrance, but this is definitely not a clone of that one. I would say it's definitely more on the sort of Platine Privé side. So again, man, check out Arsh Extrait from French Avenue. All right, so the next one on the list, this one is from the house of Cerati, and this is Cerati's Atlantis. All right, so this fragrance, this is basically, it's an interpretation, or I would say maybe you could say more of sort of like a twist on Gissa's Horizon. This fragrance, the more that I smell this fragrance, the more that I'm kind of like, this reminds me of like a Middle Eastern version, you could say, of something like Acqua di Gio Profumo. All right, now the two don't smell exactly the same, obviously, but that is, at least in my mind anyway, that is kind of like what I sort of get when I smell this fragrance. You know, it has like, you know, a fruity type of feel to it, slightly fruity, slightly kind of like watery. It definitely has, you know, a heavy emphasis on like violet and other florals. And it does also have a sort of dark, sort of like incense water type of smell to it as well. You know, obviously with Acqua di Gio Profumo, you're getting a lot of, you know, like, you know, at least up top anyway, you're getting kind of like citrus, marine notes. You're getting like incense in this fragrance, patchouli. So, I mean, again, the two are not the same at all, but I kind of feel like they're sort of like in the same sort of family of fragrances. So this is more so kind of like a Western style take on that type of, you know, scent profile. And I think that Atlantis from Cerati is more of sort of like a, you know, Eastern or, you know, Middle Eastern take on that particular scent profile. Now, to me, the original fragrance, Gissa Horizon, it smells a lot more sort of natural smelling. And in my opinion, it is the better fragrance for sure. But at least in my opinion, this fragrance is still a solid fragrance. Now I know, obviously, there's been a ton of controversy with this fragrance because it was said to initially have been, you know, like a Pacific Chill inspired fragrance, and then they changed the juice in the bottle and made it, you know, to be Gissa's Horizon. But I feel like if you're going into this fragrance just with kind of like a clear mind, and you're not, you know, judging this fragrance in any sort of way based off of what you've heard, I do think that this is a very solid, you know, kind of spring and summertime type of fragrance. It definitely is going to smell different from a lot of other things that, you know, most people are probably wearing. But, you know, again, like I said, it does give me a slightly kind of, you know, similar vibe as what something like Acqua di Gio Profumo does. You know, again, not exactly the same, definitely a lot more sort of Middle Eastern smelling. And, you know, to me, it's this version of it anyway is definitely the more kind of synthetic smell for sure. But this does last a very long time, you know, easily over 10 hours or so. And the projection on it is also pretty good as well. I've gotten samples of all of the other, you know, Cerati fragrances that come in this bottle style. So I'll be doing a video on that pretty soon and comparing them to the original Gissa fragrances. And, you know, a lot of them were actually pretty solid. So I would definitely check out this line from Cerati for sure. This is a 140 ml bottle, which I got from oudstore.com, and I believe it was like $59.99. So, you know, when you look at the cost per ml, this is definitely a cheaper fragrance for sure. So, Again, man, if you're looking for something that is, you know, slightly kind of fruity, slightly floral, slightly watery, slightly kind of incensey and dark, then I would absolutely recommend checking out Cerati's Atlantis. All right, next one on the list. This one is from Alexandria Fragrances, and this is their take on Louis Vuitton's, what is it, Meteore. And this is Le Meteore. All right. So this fragrance is so far the closest thing that I've smelled to Louis Vuitton's Meteore. I'm still, you know, kind of debating on whether or not I want to actually buy Meteore or not. You know, it's kind of between Meteore, it's between Meteore, Roja's Elysium Parfum, or I want to say Le Labo's Another 13. I know I want to pick up at least one of those fragrances this year. I'm not sure which one. I'm definitely more kind of leaning towards Elysium Parfum, only because I know Aura Fragrance typically has that one for like around $250. Whereas obviously the Le Labo, that one is going to be at least over $300, I'm pretty sure. And then obviously so will the Louis Vuitton. But this, at least for me anyway, is like one of my favorite sort of just, I want to smell fresh and clean sort of scent profiles. You know, I know a lot of people, they kind of consider this like a blue fragrance. I mean, I guess I kind of see that. I don't necessarily look at it as like a blue fragrance per se. It's just a very kind of like, to me, I get more sort of soapy clean vibes from this fragrance than I do something like Imagination, which is crazy because it seems like more people kind of, you know, associate like a soapy sort of smell with Imagination, whereas I more so associate that, you know, sort of soapy smell with something like Le Meteor, or not Le Meteor, but Meteore from Louis Vuitton. And like I said, this has definitely been the closest inspired fragrance to that, you know, that I've smelled. It's not exactly the same. The Louis Vuitton is, in my opinion, better than the Alexandria version. But I do think that this is definitely the next best thing, at least that I've smelled. All of the other, you know, sort of cheaper Middle Eastern houses, or even like Luciano, that have put out their versions of Meteore, which I think really the only other house that has put out a version of Meteore, I think, has been Luciano that I've smelled. And that, while in the initial opening, it smelled really good, as that fragrance started to dry down, it just smelled cheap, in my opinion, and really nothing like, you know, Meteore. So if you're looking for a cheap alternative, or a cheaper alternative to Meteore, you know, you're looking for that really kind of citrusy, you know, floral, soapy type of smell that you get from Meteore, then I would definitely say that Le Meteor, you know, will definitely be one that you'll want to look at. Performance is about the same as it is with the Louis Vuitton, at least for me anyway. After about 5 hours or so, I'm not really able to smell it anymore. So that's really the only kind of downside to the scent profile, at least for me anyway. But this is a very, very good interpretation, man. All right, so the next one on the list, this one is from Arabiette Prestige, and this is Arabiette Prestige's Marwa. So this is their take on Louis Vuitton's Imagination. And again, this to me is the best Louis Vuitton Imagination inspired fragrance. So insert any other Louis Vuitton inspired fragrance that I've reviewed, and yes, to me, and you know, at least in my opinion, this is better than those fragrances. You know, it's a very, very good performing fragrance as well. I would say it has at least about twice the strength as what, you know, Louis Vuitton's Imagination has, and it also has about the same, you know, longevity really as well. Which, you know, again, I don't get bad longevity out of Imagination. That's a fragrance that sticks on me quite a long time, and so does this, but this is just a little bit more amped up and stronger. Now, again, in the initial opening of this fragrance, the way that they kind of do that neroli accord, since they're not actually using neroli, or neroli is not an actual note in this fragrance, the way that they're kind of recreating that neroli accord, it does come off as slightly sharper, in the initial couple of, opening minutes of the fragrance than what it does in Imagination. But I would say really after about maybe 3 to 5 minutes or so, this smells just like Imagination, but just with, I would say, more of an amplified sort of feel to it. All right. In terms of like just quality and stuff like that, this is just as good in my opinion as Imagination is. It doesn't sacrifice quality or anything like that to achieve that sort of higher performance. This smells really, really good. So again, insert any other Louis Vuitton Imagination inspired fragrance out there, especially all of the ones that I have actually, done videos on. And yes, this fragrance, in my opinion, is better than those fragrances. All right. So again, man, definitely check out Arabiette Prestige's Marwa. All right, next one on the list. This one is one from Lattafa, and this is Lattafa's Art of Universe. So this is their take on Blue Talisman. I'm actually wearing this fragrance here today. And this is, in my opinion, it doesn't do the initial opening as good as what the Ex Nihilo does, but probably after like the first 20 to 30 minutes or so of both fragrances, it's very hard to tell the difference between Art of Universe and Blue Talisman. You could definitely say that Blue Talisman is, a little bit sweeter than what Blue Talisman is, for sure. And, Blue Talisman does have a slightly more, kind of natural type of smell to it. But I still feel like this comes at least 90+% close to Blue Talisman. In terms of just overall sort of closeness. So this is a very good interpretation of it. It has, like I said, a slightly sweeter opening. The pear in this is not as natural smelling as what it is in Blue Talisman. And I don't even believe, I think pear might not even be like the top note of this fragrance the way it is in Blue Talisman. I think it might be in the mid of this fragrance. So it definitely does come off as a little bit sweeter for sure. But overall, man, this is very, very close to Blue Talisman. So if you're looking for like a really, really good performing fruity floral type of fragrance, this will definitely be, one of those fragrances that you'll want to look into if you're looking for that scent profile on a budget. All right. Again, performance wise, this does really good. I mean, it projects really, really strongly. I would say at least about 6 feet or so for like the first 3+ hours. And then longevity on this is easily over 12 hours on me. So very, very good performance, really good quality, really, really good in terms of closeness of smell for sure. Overall, again, I would definitely recommend Art of Universe from Lattafa. All right, and then the last one on the list, this one is from Eyenash. This is the only Eyenash fragrance that I've, smelled or purchased so far. But this one is Eyenash's L'Infinite. And this is their take on Louis Vuitton's L'Immensité. So this is also the best L'Immensité interpretation that I've picked up. It to me is definitely higher quality smelling and more closer to the original than what something like John Lowe Immortal is from Maison Alhambra. It does smell very kind of similar to something like more like L'Infinite from Fragrance World, but this is definitely the richer smelling and closer to the original smelling fragrance than what L'Infinite is. Fragrance World did a really good job on L'Infinite, but I feel like in terms of how that fragrance, kind of projects, it doesn't project as good as what the original Louis Vuitton does. The herbs to me smell a little bit more richer and stronger, you know, at least in the initial opening in the Louis Vuitton than what they do in the Infinite from Fragrance World. Whereas in this fragrance, this one, I feel like it has, the strength is more aligned with like the original Louis Vuitton. And also the herbs in this fragrance, it has the same, almost the same sort of sweetness in terms of how those herbs come across in the initial opening as what they do in the Louis Vuitton. Now this is still not like exactly the same as the Louis Vuitton. I do think the Louis Vuitton Le Monsité is the more, you know, richer smelling fragrance even over this. But if we're talking about like cheaper alternatives, this to me is the best one that I've smelled. So, you know, better again than L'Infinite from Fragrance World, better than Maison Alhambra's John Lowe Immortal. I would also say that this is better than Alexandria's, what is it, Lament City, I believe is what it's called. Better than Luciano's Magnitude. This is just the smoothest, you know, most highest quality, you know, smelling, you know, version that I've smelled. All right. So performance wise, I get pretty decent performance out of this, you know, right around kind of 8 hours of longevity. And then I would say like about an arm's length or so for about like the first hour and a half. So, you know, pretty standard performance out of this one. All right. So if you're looking for a cheaper alternative to, you know, Louis Vuitton's Le Monsité, this would definitely be the one that I would recommend. Again, this is L'Infinite from Eyenash. All right, and that's my take on these fragrances, man. That's my top 10 inspired fragrance summer list of 2025. So definitely let me know what you all thought about this list. Do you all have any of these fragrances? Do you have all of them? If so, what do you all think about these fragrances? Let me know in the comments below. Also, I'll have links in the description to where you can actually pick these fragrances up. And if you're brand new to the channel, do me a favor, go ahead and subscribe. And again, that's Jamar from Vegas Scents. I'll see you all in the next video.